Thank you. Thank you. If you've ever witnessed a forest fire or fought one, it's an experience that you will never forget. Imagine being a wildland firefighter. For weeks you battled a relentless inferno. Around you, people are fleeing their homes, unsure when they'll return or if they'll have a home to return to. It's incredibly hot, it's dry, and it's loud. And the smoke, it suffocates and smothers, sometimes reducing visibility to only feet in front of you. In these conditions, you find yourself alone, one of countless firefighters battling a fire that's burned hundreds, thousands of acres already. Separated from your crew, you are alone with your thoughts, your memories, and your fears. And in the midst of the smoke and the flames, you begin to face the dire reality of your situation. But this is not the end of your story. In the distance, you hear the life-saving sound of rotor blades from a helicopter piloted by a stranger. A stranger from right here in Las Vegas, Nevada, Chief Warrant Officer Kevin Keeler, who was flying a reconnaissance mission on the Dixie Fire when a search and rescue call came in for a missing lone firefighter. At that critical moment, Kevin was ready and he was there. And that's our promise. Always ready, always there. For our nation, for our communities, and for each other. First and foremost today, I want to thank all of you, the soldiers, airmen, National Guard families, and those who support us. Your efforts have a tremendous impact. What our National Guard was able to do for our nation, from combat operations to COVID, from overseas deployments to hurricanes, from wildfires to civil disturbance, from capital response to floods, from search and rescue to cyber support, was truly unprecedented. Your ability to meet every mission, whether home or abroad, shows the importance of the National Guard to our nation and to the world. I also want to thank Mick McGuire, Roy Robinson, and the team at NGAUS for the opportunity to share this time with you today. I also want to thank the members of NGAUS who serve in and support the National Guard. And I want to personally thank the former chiefs, directors, adjutants general, and senior enlisted leaders who helped make the Guard what it is today. When people ask me what I love most about my job, the answer is easy. I get to work with remarkable citizen soldiers and airmen who boldly step forward to take on any mission. I get to hear their extraordinary stories and share them with our nation's leadership. Stories like Staff Sergeants Demetrius Llanos and Eric Vargas from the California National Guard, who outperformed both Green Beret and Marine Raiders in last December's Best Sniper competition. Air Force First Lieutenant Eric Selinsky and Technical Sergeant Holly McClellan from the Utah National Guard, who provided pediatric medical care to local children during Exercise African Lion in Morocco. And the hundreds of soldiers and airmen who, as I speak, are supporting operations in Afghanistan. We demonstrate today, as we have every day since 1636, always ready, always there, is more than a motto. It's our promise. When I became the 29th Chief of the National Guard Bureau just over a year ago, we put together a team to reach out to the 54 to get your thoughts about the National Guard, what we were doing right, what we were doing wrong, and what we could improve. The information was very helpful, and when combined with feedback from my visits to the 54, it became clear where we should prioritize efforts at the National Guard Bureau. We also looked at a message, or catchphrase for me as the 29th chief. In a way, our version of people first, winning matters, or accelerate change or lose. What I realized in that process, and over the past year as chief, is it's our people that are the message. And in today's ever-changing environment, enduring principles should be our guide. This brought me back to why the National Guard was founded 385 years ago. Under the simple and timeless principle, always ready, always there. These 4 words represent so much, yet only those who have lived it understand what it takes to uphold those words. When we say always ready, always there, we're talking about the dedication of a volunteer force, attracting the best people and retaining our top talent, having the right training to accomplish any mission, and having the right equipment to meet combatant command requirements. All of this while maintaining a sustainable balance between your family, your civilian career, and your military service. Throughout my National Guard career, I've seen firsthand the difference we're making in communities across the country. I've seen the patriotism and dedication of our soldiers and airmen. I've seen the support provided by our families and employers, and I've seen the pride in giving back to our nation. But for all of our accomplishments and efforts over the past year, the future looks even more challenging. We're entering a new phase of warfare, and the National Guard has a role in every aspect, from competition to crisis. Every week, my fellow Joint Chiefs and I talk about the greatest challenges facing the Joint Force and our nation. And nearly every issue has a National Guard nexus. Over the past 20 years, the fight in Afghanistan and Iraq transformed us from a strategic reserve to today's operational force. The investment our country made in the National Guard has helped create the best trained, best equipped, and most professional force we have ever been. And as we draw down our forces in the Middle East and look to the future, we don't anticipate a significant change in our overseas deployment levels. In fact, our operational tempo will likely increase slightly as the Joint Force continues to rely on the National Guard. The drawdown will, however, allow our nation to focus on a bigger threat to our national security and the post-war global order, and that is specifically China. They are the only competitor capable of challenging the stable and open international order. Our strategy requires us to demonstrate to our allies and partners the United States remains the partner of choice. And the National Guard is uniquely equipped to do this through our state partnership program. Our 83 strategic partnerships will help our nation retain its competitive edge. Here at home, 2021 continues to be another monumental year for the National Guard. There is no shortage of domestic operations as we continue to see the impacts of COVID, devastating hurricanes, historic wildfires, floods, and other events. We must continue to improve our responses. We're really good at what we do, and we need to document what we learn and standardize and share our procedures where we haven't already. We need to bring our military professionalism from planning to operations to recovery to everything we do. Work closely with our partners and be deliberate with our resources. The threat to our communities is real and enduring. Our response must be as well. We've made a promise to our nation, always ready, always there. In order to keep that promise, we must focus our efforts at the National Guard Bureau on what is most important, and those are my 4 priorities: people, readiness, modernization, and reform. I want to briefly walk you through these priorities, not just to go over them so a year from now I can look back and see if we accomplished anything, but to share with you real initiatives we're working on today and will every day until I leave this job. In the interest of time, I'll cover just 2 initiatives under each priority, but please understand there are many more that we don't have time to cover today. I want to start with my first priority, and that's people. Everything we do is made possible by our people. Without exaggeration, I cannot imagine where our nation or communities would be without our citizen soldiers and airmen. You and those who came before you are one of our nation's greatest treasures. We have an incredible team, and our recruiting and retention reflects this. People see all that we do, and they want to be part of it. But we also ask a lot of our people, and we must continue to address the evolving issues our soldiers, airmen, and families face. The 2 initiatives I'd like to cover on our people are health care and requirements beyond drill and annual training. My first and number 1 priority is health care for every Guardsman. An estimated 14% of National Guard members don't have health coverage. If they get sick or hurt, how can they be ready to deploy if they can't afford to see a doctor? In every meeting on Capitol Hill, in my office calls in the Pentagon, and in interviews, I've been very clear. Every soldier and airman in the National Guard needs health care, and they need it today. This is not only the right thing to do for our people, yet it's investment in the readiness of 20% of our joint force. The second initiative is resourcing mandatory requirements beyond drill and annual training. The example I'll use is professional military education, or PME. PME is required for professional development and promotion. And if it's a military requirement, we need to make sure our soldiers and airmen are compensated for their time away from their families and employers. We're committed to resourcing all of the duty required of our soldiers and airmen, and we'll facilitate a working group from across the 54 to find the best way forward. My second priority is readiness. In today's dynamic threat environment, we must achieve readiness at the individual, formation, and organizational levels. In doing so, we fulfill our objectives as an operational force and help our nation prepare for whatever challenges we may face, both here at home and overseas. There are many factors that determine readiness, but today I will focus on Army divisions and mandatory training. Let's start with divisions. When we aligned our 8 division headquarters in the Army National Guard with down trace units, the Army went from 10 to 18 combat divisions. And I'm sure the deterrent effect of increasing our divisions by 80% was not lost by China or Russia. By providing 8 of the Army's 18 divisions, we are part of the development and modernization process, which will help ensure our formations are interoperable on the battlefield. But most importantly, our divisions and their ground trace units have the opportunity to train and build readiness for large-scale combat operations. This is a clear shift from operations over the past 20 years, but it's what we need to be ready for the future. It's what we need to help keep our promise. The second initiative is consolidating our mandatory training requirements to one drill weekend, or as close as possible. This isn't a new idea, but we have yet to make it happen. I want our soldiers and airmen to come home from drill weekends exhausted, but invigorated and proud of what they've done. It's hard to feel that way when many drills are filled with mandatory briefings designed for a full-time force. This is not to say the training is not worthwhile. It just takes a disproportionate amount of time when applied to a part-time force. We need to do this differently. We need to prioritize mandatory training, identify what's most important, meet the intent, and do it in a single drill weekend, or use technology like phone applications so we can focus the limited time we have on doing our jobs and building readiness. We'll work with the 54 and the services to identify best practices and manage risk so we can get the most out of our drill periods and annual training. My third priority is modernization. And no matter how much we could commit to readiness as a formation or individual, our ability to fight and win our nation's wars will always be reliant on our level of modernization. It's not only equipment, however, it's personnel, training, processes, and much more. It's also the priority that requires the most coordination. The bottom line is we need to be interoperable with the joint force. We cannot be a force multiplier on the battlefield with the weapons of yesterday. Unfortunately, resources are finite and there is competition for them. The two initiatives I would like to cover today are 25-year strategic plans and degree of funding. First, I'll cover 25-year strategic plans for our major weapons systems. I saw this first with the Utah National Guard's work on the KC-135. I realized we needed a long-term strategic plan for each of our major weapons systems to ensure they are modernized in a timely manner and remain deployable, sustainable, and interoperable, not only with the joint force, but with our allies and partners. A strategic plan helps identify years in advance when we need to advocate for required modernization, as we have seen with our C-130H fleet. In addition, it helps identify when we need to engage with the services for emerging missions when we see a potential end to some of our current ones. Like our advocacy for the cyber mission years ago, or the next generation of weapons systems like the F-35, we need to plan for the future of each of our formations. We are working with the senior leadership of the Army and the Air Force to ensure National Guard force structure and equipment is included in future force design and modernization. We can't predict when or where the next conflict will be or who might get there first, so we must stay engaged throughout this process to ensure our equipment, training, and processes are modernized and ready to fight and win. The second area I'd like to talk about is NGAUS. Consistent, robust NGAUS funding is critical to the National Guard. Our adversaries aren't waiting for the next budget cycle. They're building, innovating, and developing the next generation of warfare right now. We are doing the same. And in many cases, NGAUS funding is critical to our modernization efforts. It gives us the ability and flexibility to prioritize resources to fill mission-critical shortages to improve our readiness. It also allows us to resource dual-use equipment unique to our missions in the homeland. My fourth priority is reform. I've been in the National Guard over 25 years, and as chief, I still see things I saw as a battalion commander, brigade commander, and adjutant general that made me think, why do we do it like that? Or how come they can do that and we can't? We must continue to ask these questions and find the answers. We need to identify and implement new and better ways to serve our soldiers, airmen, and families, which will ultimately better serve our nation. Toward that end, there are two initiatives I will cover. The first is to put 10% of our Title X workforce remotely in the 54. The second is a long-term strategy for state partnerships. The first is what I call the 10% goal, where we identified 10% of the Title X positions at the National Guard Bureau that can actually be done remotely. The intent, similar to our technician program, is Monday through Friday, a soldier airman would perform their Title X responsibilities. But on drill weekends and during annual training, they would still perform their duties as part of a Guard formation. I know there are many reasons it's tough to move to the DC area. In addition to traffic and the high cost of living, some of our most capable service members may have family considerations that do not make it possible to leave their local communities. With the 10% goal, our service members could perform Title X duties in support of the 54 without uprooting their families or leaving their current units. I think this will help NGB better serve the 54. When soldiers and airmen are in tune with the needs and concerns of our states, M-Day and dual status and drill status guardsmen, they can offer a different perspective. That perspective can help us identify and resolve issues at every level. It gives our soldiers and airmen the opportunity to facilitate change without a change of address. The second initiative is a long-term strategic plan for state partnerships. In almost every forum, it's clear alliances and partnerships are a national security priority. And pound for pound, the SPP is among the most productive security cooperation programs in the entire defense enterprise. The program also provides our soldiers and airmen opportunities to build enduring relationships, train and learn with their partners, and become more aware of the global environment they operate in. That said, the SPP has long struggled to get the reliable funding so states and their partners can plan beyond the immediate fiscal year. In addition, historically we worked on an annual basis with combatant commands in the State Department to identify new partnerships, and states that were interested in partnering with those countries applied for those. This was not always the best process, as sometimes a better match for a state and a partner country would present itself at a later date. We are now working closely with the combatant commands and State Department to identify and prioritize the next 30 potential state partnership countries, which is what we feel is about the maximum we could effectively support. This will allow states to look forward for what might be the best match for them and allow us to work with the combatant commands and State Department on timing, the specific needs of the country, and the region. One last area I would like to cover falls under all four categories, and that is the formation of a Space National Guard. We've been working this issue since the inception of the Space Force, but we're not across the finish line yet. The Space National Guard is a matter of people, readiness, and modernization, but ultimately, it's about reform and doing the right thing. We have the personnel, the capabilities, and more than 25 years of experience in the space mission. It makes sense these formations should be aligned with the Space Force as a National Guard component. These priorities reflect this moment, a time of transformation, the threshold of a new era. But the National Guard has been at pivotal moments before. We were there when our nation was born. We were in the Argonne Forest in World War I and on the beaches of Normandy in World War II. We were there in Korea, and we were there in Vietnam. We were at ground zero, and today we're in Kabul. Each tipped the fate and faith of our nation, and each time the Guard was there. We are living in one of those pivotal moments right now. For nearly 20 years, we have served and sacrificed in Afghanistan. As a combat reserve of the Army and the Air Force, our presence there was significant. Answering our nation's call, we left behind our families, civilian jobs, and communities. We performed every mission, served with honor, and never lost sight of our duty as citizen soldiers and airmen. We will remain forever grateful for those who served and their families. Our thoughts are especially with our Gold Star families and those who still bear the wounds of war. And I ask that you please keep our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines serving in Afghanistan, their families, and the people of Afghanistan in your thoughts and prayers, and especially the families of those killed and wounded this week. Their sacrifices are a reminder to all of us that we are a small and deeply connected community. We are brothers and sisters in arms who serve selflessly and believe in something greater than ourselves. It's a promise we make to our nation, a promise we make to our communities, and today, it's a promise we make to each other. We do not merely mourn, we do not just vow to remember, we proudly wear the cloth of our nation. We are here to carry on their legacy. The coming years will be a test of the professionalism and interoperability we have attained over the past 20 years. We know what we have to do. Now we have to do it. People, readiness, modernization, and reform. They are how we remain always ready, always there. So in the days, weeks, and months ahead, let's get to work on what is most important and make a measurable difference. We have a promise to keep. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Chief. We've got the Chief Wireless, so we got 2 mics here, and I'll be able to moderate, and I think we've got some mics out there, Roy, set up, is that right? Yep. So at this time, we've got about 25 minutes of time allocated to take questions from the audience, and we'll start here with some discussion about the Guard and the Chief's initiative for people. You mentioned the healthcare situation, sir, and I'd be interested in just your thoughts about the way things are trending with that legislative priority, and any way you think we can help through our association to meet that requirement going forward.
Great, thank you, Mick. So one of the things that we found in my trips across the 54, and one of the greatest assets I have, and yes, I totally married up, is this beautiful lady right here in the front row. So when Kelly and I go across the 54, I have a chance to meet with a lot of our soldiers, airmen, and leadership. And then Kelly meets with the families and the family support programs and a lot of our spouses. And we ask, what are those things that have the greatest impact on our formations and our ability to serve? And one of those that was a consistent across the board was healthcare. And we really saw this over the past year related to COVID. When we asked our soldiers and airmen to go into an environment we were really unsure of at the first part. And we asked them to perform in that environment. And in some cases, if their orders were not greater than 31 days, they didn't have health care coverage. And we felt that that was a complete disservice to our service members. And so since that time, I've been working with a lot of our congressional leadership, and I know you have as well, because I hear that from their offices when we talk to them, about the importance of making sure that no matter what we ask our Guardsmen to do, they know that if they get hurt or injured, either on duty or off, that they're going to get the care they need to go back to work and to continue to serve and take care of their families. And the other thing that we found as well is if you have a certain healthcare system and you come on orders, in some cases you have to find new medical providers. And when you're getting ready to deploy, sometimes that's the last thing you need, is to try and find a difficult medical provider that will take the insurance that you have. And so what we're looking for is consistency across the board for our service members so that they have health care no matter what we ask them to do. And as we really saw throughout our entire Guard career, but really particularly over the last 18 months, sometimes it is no notice in civil disturbance, hurricanes, wildfires, and even COVID, that we're bringing people on orders as quickly as we can. And that's not the time to try and resolve issues or medical issues that may prevent somebody from performing their duties. So I ask for your support to do that because I think it's the right thing to do for our people. In fact, it's frankly just the right thing to do. One thing that is of concern, of course, is the cost of this. And so we've looked at numerous plans and we're working with our elected leaders to find something that is viable, and we will continue to work that every day as long as I'm the chief. Okay, thank you.
You bet. Now, it's difficult to see out there. I've got a question back here on the left. Go ahead, sir.
General Hokanson, Ken Nava, New Mexico. How you doing, sir?
Hey, good, Ken.
You knew I had to come up here, right?
Yep, exactly.
Hey, so again, thank you on behalf of all the adjutants general for everything that you're doing for us as the chief. One of the first things that I remember you talking about as you came in was this idea of reforming the National Guard Bureau staff. So I'm just curious as to, have your thoughts changed on that? How do you think that's going? Just your thoughts, sir. Thanks.
Okay, great, thank you, Ken. So, and really this started my predecessor. General Engel did a lot of work to help really take a look at the National Guard Bureau staff to see how we can better support the 54. And when I came in as chief, we stood up a team called UNO. It's Unified National Guard Organization. And what we asked them to do is to take a look at the organization, how the National Guard Bureau is organized, and really take a look at the other services and combatant commands to see if there is a more efficient way that we can utilize our people, and then really focus that support to the 54. Because at the bottom line is the reason we exist is to make sure that those soldier and airmen can show up to drill every single weekend to fill our formations and provide the readiness that our nation needs. If we're not facilitating that, we're not doing the right things. And so what we tried to do is consolidate some areas, and one of those I'll highlight is our Warrior Resilience and Fitness Program. And what we found is a lot of soldier care programs like suicide awareness, suicide prevention, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and also families, they were really silos. But in many cases, they would all see each other at the same events. And so what we realized is by combining them together, we could really learn from each other and really provide better support to the 54. And also between the Army and the Air, because some programs are funded for the Army and not for the Air. To me, if you're a Guardsman, you're a Guardsman. It doesn't matter what color your uniform is. We have to do everything we can to take care of you and your families. And so that is also helping us find those barriers, break those down, so that we don't have programs for one service and not the other. But Ken, it's an ongoing process. And the key is we did not want to have it impact our service to the 54. So we continue to do that. My goal was to have it IOC by the 1st of October. We're on track to do that. I got one of my latest update briefs on Friday. And I look forward to wrapping that up, and we'll keep the 54 advised on how that changes. And part of this goes back to my comment there about the 10%. And what we realized during COVID, one of the good things about that we realized, is a lot of the work doesn't actually physically need to be done in the building. And by reaching out to the 54 and having a drill status guardsman that's doing Title 10 work as well, what they learn and see the impact on the drill status soldiers and airmen, they can help us resolve those by working through their Title 10 duties. And so we hope that this broad-based plan will really help us become more efficient and more supportive. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Let's go over here on my right.
Yes, thank you, sir. My name is Captain Charles Beckman. I'm from Utah. I was hoping to ask this question during the company grade officer OPD, but I appreciate the opportunity to do it in this forum. So my question is about constraints coming up in the next year. We're seeing a lot of training budgets cut by as much as 25% or even more, but we are also in a dynamic threat environment going to great power competition, but also obviously COIN is still very much at front of mind. So I have a two-part question for you, sir, is first of all, what would Captain Hokanson do as a company commander, as a staff officer, to navigate this type of constrained environment? And what is General Hokanson doing to make sure that National Guard Bureau is supporting the states in navigating these uncertain times?
Okay. So great questions. So there's actually 3 Captain Hokansons. But as Captain Hokanson, when I look back to my time as a company commander and my time as a captain when I first came into the National Guard, is to really focus on what my readiness requirements are, and then really taking care of the soldiers and airmen that I worked with. Because at the end of the day, not everything has a monetary solution, so we take everything that we can, all the resources we have, and that's why we look to our first level leaders to use innovative ways to make sure that they can meet the readiness requirements and make sure that our soldiers and airmen are really as trained the best we can for anything that they may encounter. Understanding that if it does become to a large-scale operation or a deployment, there are things that we'll be able to take care of in a Title X status when we're mobilized. But if you can take care of all of those things at your level prior to that, using whatever innovative ways you have and the resources you have, really that's the best we can do. Now, as General Hokanson, I work with John Jensen and Mike Lowe across both services. And one of the things that we're facing right now is when you look at the threats out there, we absolutely have got to modernize not only the Air Force and the Army, but all components of the Air Force and the Army. And when you look at the funding, or the limited funding that's available to do that, we have to make very difficult decisions. But for me, and this kind of goes back to some of the things I talked about, readiness is absolutely critical. But if we don't have modernized equipment that are going to keep us safe and effective on the battlefield, then we really put ourselves at a disadvantage. So as General Hokanson, I'm trying to balance that, to make sure that we make the investments to modernize our forces, but then also retain enough readiness so that if we have to go to work now, we have the capability and capacity to do that with what we have today. So, thank you.
Okay, over here on my left, please, go ahead.
Good day, sir. Major Adam Lule, Oregon National Guard.
Cool.
I was your bilateral affairs officer in Vietnam for the last two years, and it's exciting to hear you talk about the importance of the state partnership program. It was pretty easy to get funding for travel for my guardsmen coming over, but it was very difficult to get days. So I'm always robbing from company commanders that were supposed to be doing the go-to-war mission as well as your state mission. You talked a little bit about the budget for that. Is that a big focus for you? Because that state partnership mission is a great for retention, recruiting, strategic, with our, as you talked about China attack. So that's what I wanted is days. How do I get more days so I can bring personnel over?
Okay, so you really hit on it there. One of the things we want to make sure is that we work within the department to get the money palmed or basically allocated over the 5-year defense plan. Because it's extremely hard to plan year to year when your money is only good for a year. And we've got great support within Congress. They always add funding. The problem is how late we get that funding determines whether or not we can utilize it. Because it has to be spent by the 30th of September. And if you get the money in April or May or sometimes even June, the window to utilize that is very narrow. And a lot of times our partner nations can't, respond that quickly, nor can we. And so some of the things that we're talking about is trying to get multi-year money, or at least a plan to where our funding can extend a longer period of time, or at least we know each year we're going to get this amount. When I talk to the combatant commanders, every single one cannot emphasize enough the importance of the state partnership program. And I will tell you, earlier this year, I got a chance to go to Tunisia and Morocco and visit during exercise African Lion. And Morocco's state partnership is Utah. And when you go there, they all know everybody in the Utah National Guard. And they've been training with them. They've been meeting with them from years. And that level of importance of that relationship to the combatant commander, in this case, Steve Townsend, I mean, he could not tell me enough. You guys are his main effort down there because we provide, in many cases, more support than he gets from any assigned forces. So that's why it's important to me. And when I talk about the 30-year plan, we need to know where we can continue to make that great difference. But part of that is providing that consistent funding. So that's something that we're working on to make sure that we can do. Okay.
Thank you. Over here on the left again.
Sir, Captain Christopher Carrington, Kentucky Army National Guard, with a unit that supports the 101st Airborne Active Duty Unit, the MIG-POD in Louisville. One question I have, sir, I know your priority is modernization. The most important part of our military is our people. As a civilian police officer in Kentucky, we have modernized the best we could to mitigate our staffing issues. Most police departments, as you know, sir, are 25% down in staffing or more. We're doing that through technology, through catching telesurf calls, using our autonomous machines to go into houses to breach. I'm wondering, when you look in the future, you look at your intellectuals and your business leaders, Elon Musk, Bezos, Bates, they come to mind, and one of the discussions they're having currently is the idea of autonomous driving vehicles. And my question is, with our staffing here, retention is important in the military. The 88 Mike position specifically, what is your, I guess, future outlook on that 3 to 5 years from now? Are we going to have a non-existent 88 Mike if we can have vehicles do it and save our soldiers that danger?
So that's a great question, and thank you for your service in your community and with the National Guard. When we look at technology and the stuff that's out there, and you'll see some of it in the display areas here too, where the vendors are, we obviously want to leverage technology everywhere that we can. And I know there are ongoing efforts to look at, autonomous logistic vehicles. There's also looking at autonomous drones that can carry equipment as well. I think there will always be a need for personal or human interaction in a lot of those areas, but there are areas that we can automate or make basically to operate remotely. And I'm sure as we look forward, that'll be part of it. The thing is fortunately you'll hopefully be able to see that in the years ahead. We have a team within the National Guard called the National Guard Innovation Team, and we ask them to look at ideas on how we would do this, but also keep us up to date on some of those emerging technologies. One of the things that I do is visit some of these companies to take a look at that, because I want to understand the potential use within the National Guard in areas like you said. When we look at some of the things that we learned over the last 20 years, when you man a vehicle and it goes through a dangerous area, you always put those people at risk. If we can do that autonomously, where only a machine is at risk, then I think it benefits the entire organization. So in the years, I think you'll see future development of that, but I think that's one of the ways and one of the areas that we're headed towards.
And
Thank
sir,
you.
I think the panel will agree, can I offer you the best bourbon ball in the nation from the state of Kentucky?
Sure, you can approach the chair.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Appreciate it. Cool.
All right. Over on my left, we got another one there. Go ahead.
Sir, Captain Osmolsky, Wisconsin Army National Guard. Will the vaccine mandate apply to M-Day service members? And if so, how many do we think we might lose over it? Thank you.
Okay. So when we look at the SecDef memo that came out, it does say that they will vaccinate all service members. Now, there's, of course, a timeline related to that, and vaccinations in the military are nothing new. In fact, making them mandatory is not anything new as well. Right now, the only vaccine that has actually passed FDA approval is the Pfizer vaccine, so that's the only one right now that actually can be mandated. However, the other vaccines out there as well, they can be utilized by the individuals now at their discretion if they would prefer to do that. One of the things that we're working on is we want to make sure that each of our service members are in a duty status at the time that they receive their vaccinations. That way, if anything occurs, they're covered. To include, we're looking right now about if say a soldier airman wants to go down to a local drugstore and get a different one, like Johnson & Johnson or Moderna. We're looking at trying to put them in a duty status when they do that to make sure that they're covered. But the goal right now, the Secretary of Defense has delegated this to the service secretaries. And so the Army and the Air Guard right now are in close coordination with both the Army and the Air Force to look at how this will be implemented across the force and the timeline under which it's done. So that's something that as we we'll continue to share that information. And you may not be aware, but every Thursday we have a call across the 54 to all the adjutants general or their representative, and we cover key topics like this every week to provide them the latest information. And our surgeon, Major General Jill Ferris, provided a pretty good update this week, and we'll continue to share that not only with the adjutants general, but the state surgeons, so you know what to expect in the months ahead.
All right, we'll take the last one here on the right, and then we have a quick closing for today's session. So please go ahead.
Captain Colbert from North Dakota. Sir, you mentioned China and how it's the greatest threat to the open international order. And I've recently learned about China's aggressive efforts to exert influence in Africa. And as being from North Dakota, a state with 3 partner nations in Africa, I'm curious about your thoughts on how the Guard and the State Partnership Program may be able to help curb that influence.
So that's a very good question. And this is one of those things that I learned from General Townsend, the combatant commander of AFRICOM. And when you look at our state partnerships there, AFRICOM doesn't have a lot of assigned forces. And so they rely very heavily on the National Guard and our state partnership to really provide a counter message to what they're hearing from China and the African continent. And this really goes back to showing the world that we're that partner of choice. Usually things that China or Russia do, they have strings attached. We'll do this, but we'd really like you to do that. For us, we're actually looking out for the well-being of the people in the nation, and we're trying to build a long-term relationship, not a relationship that is based on taking resources or not caring about the folks that we work with. We care very deeply about the people that we work with. And so as we look forward to the future of the state partnership, and this is not just Africa, it's in Central and South America, it's literally around the globe. We see the National Guard as reinforcing that message that the United States is a partner of choice and that we're here to help them in terms of the long term. And when you look at our relationships and partnerships going back over 25 years, those are enduring. We're not just here to get something from you, we are here for the long-term good of your nation and ours as well. So we will continue to do everything we can, particularly in Africa and Southcom as well, but also in Indo-PACOM and really continue in EUCOM to look at what we can do to help influence that and really provide a counter message to some of the things that are being put out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, at the beginning of our time today, I walked on stage to a song you've probably heard before in movies or commercials, but you might not know its title. It's called Fanfare for the Common Man. It speaks to the power and dignity in all of us. It honors our potential to do great things. It's the not-so-secret superpower of the National Guard. We may lead ordinary lives, have ordinary families, and ordinary jobs, but we also stand ready to defend our nation and our way of life. On the surface, we may be common men and women, but we are nothing short of extraordinary. And together, we have shown for almost 400 years we can achieve anything. Our recent past has shown how much we have to offer, both to the joint force and the communities that make up this great nation. No matter the mission, we take up the mantle of service and sacrifice. And though I know more challenges and more missions lie ahead, I believe in the soldiers, airmen, and families of the National Guard. We've made a promise to America, and we've made a promise to each other. It is my absolute honor to serve alongside you as we stand, always ready, always there. Thank you.
Besides a bourbon bar, we got. Well, Chief, thank you so much for being with us today. We do have a memento as a guest speaker and our distinguished speaker. It's a National Guard Education Foundation ornament with the 109th Airlift Wing out of New York doing an Antarctica mission, one of the many unique missions to the Guard. I'd like you to step down here with me, New York, there you go, and take a quick photo. And thank you again, sir, for all you do. We really appreciate your leadership.